Welcome to the Literature Lounge, where writers and authors share their stories behind their stories.
In the Upanishads, there's a very beautiful mantra which says that there are two birds of the self same tree sitting on the branch of a tree, and one bird eats sweet fruit but is tired and deluded. The second bird is serene and quiet and just watches. The second bird is that third eye. The first bird are our two eyes, totally involved with the world, totally involved with the forms and the names. When you are involved with nama rupa, forms and names, you are in the world of the sakar, which has a form. And anything that has a form is unstable. That form can change. That form can mean different things at different times. That form will die. The passage from the Vedas that I love very much is that there are four types of speech, and we human beings speak only 1/4. The 3/4 of speech is hidden and unspoken. In other words, translating it into beauty, we're able to speak about beauty only 25%. 75% of that beauty is unspoken.
Hi, in today's episode, we have with us Harsha V. Dehejia, who has a double doctorate, one in medicine and the other in ancient Indian culture, both from Mumbai University. He's a practicing physician and a professor of Indic studies. With more than 30 books, yes, you heard me right, 30 books, 4 films, and several curated exhibitions to his credit, his main interest is in Indian aesthetics. He divides his time between India and Canada, and the name of the book is The Third Eye of Indian Art. So, welcome, Harsha, in today's episode. So, let's begin with your inspiration for writing this book. What led you to explore the concept of the third eye?
More than inspiration, Mohua, I'm going to say dissatisfaction because of several reasons. One is the word art itself is very problematic. It's a Western word. And the other reason is that we regrettably do not have a self-standing discipline called aesthetics in the Indian wisdom tradition. And therefore, aesthetics has become a stepchild. On the one hand, there is religion and theology. On the other hand, there is philosophy. And we have to struggle between the two to kind of find a space for us. And as if this is not enough, in the 19th and 20th century, the entire discourse of Indian art, and I will have to use the word Indian art because there is no other word. I would prefer to use the word beauty because, quite honestly, there is no word art in Sanskrit, but we have lots of words for beauty. So, aesthetics is that contemplation of the beautiful and beauty. So, as I was saying, as if it was not enough that we in the Indian wisdom tradition did not have a self standing space for investigation of beauty, we then fall into the hands of our Western colonizers, especially the British, who took over the entire discourse of Indian art. And to some benefit, I can't say it was all bad, but they were not able to understand Indian art very deeply. And they were all art historians. And like good art historians, they were objectively centered. They were concerned about the objectivity of the art object. Who made it, where was it made, and what is its composition, and who was the patron, and who were the painters, and from which atelier did it come, and where did the paints come from, or they were talking of Chola bronze, and they would say, where did the copper come from into the Chola bronze? I mean, these kind of issues are all right for me up to a point. My concern, as I use the word with some humility, a philosopher of beauty, my concern is the subjective experience of beauty and not beautiful. Beautiful is an adjective. It describes the object. My concern is the subjective experience of that beautiful object within me, which we call beauty or saundarya. That is the Sanskrit word. And these, the art historians are not interested, neither are they capable of doing. So that was my dissatisfaction. And from that arose this little book. It's only a starting point. I mean, a lot of work needs to be done to really bring a true understanding of traditional Indian art. I'm not including my discourse into contemporary Indian art. I think that was going to need a completely different kind of discourse, a discourse that hasn't even started. So after art historians, the second people to hit Indian aesthetics, if again, are museums. Museum is not an Indian concept at all. It's a completely Western concept. So when, and I'm very proud to belong to the Prince of Wales Museum of Mumbai. It's a very, very beautiful museum, like any other in the world. And I've seen many, many museums in the world. The museums are very sterile. The objects there are quote unquote dead. They're completely torn out of context and placed there with very little curatorial notes. So yes, you do enjoy the object objectively, but it is very hard in a museum to take it to its inner resting point, which is Saundarya. And then, as if all this was not enough, comes the whole quote-unquote art world, a world of critics, a world of auctions, a world of art houses, where paintings and art is judged by how much it can sell for. A painting is judged by rupees per square inch. Or just the other day, to my absolute shock and horror, a very small Kangra painting was sold for, at an auction, for 16 crore rupees. 16 crores.
Wow.
Now, I don't know who bought it, and I wish him well, her well. But I doubt very much, and maybe I'm going out on a limb, that the person bought it for his inner beauty. My suspicion, and I'll stand corrected, is that that painting was bought for 16 crores as investment.
Yeah, a lot of people do art for
The
investment.
way Indian art is gone in so many different directions. Do you think Raja Sansar Chand, when he presided in the Kangra atelier in the late 18th century, ever imagined that his paintings would be auctioned for such huge amounts? He created paintings for its inherent beauty, to enjoy the painting as poetry, to enjoy the contents of the painting. In my case, my interest is in Krishna Shringar. And what beautiful paintings were created. This is the environment as we enter the 21st century. And again, there is a lot of contemporary art, which is beautiful, but I don't think we have a discourse of modern or even contemporary art. But those of us who are steeped in ancient Indian culture, and we want an experience of that beautiful, serene stillness from traditional art, we must think of the third eye. Otherwise, we are going to be lost in the objective world of what we call nama-rupa, of name and form.
So let's talk a little bit about the symbolism of the third eye, and how is it connected to the aesthetics of Indian art?
Well, what the third eye does, and it's not actually an eye, as you know, it's a space in your mind. We call it the third eye for a couple of reasons. Of course, the third eye of Shiva is what comes to mind. But many people think that the third eye of Shiva is only for destruction or anger, which is really not true. The third eye of Shiva is to destroy ignorance and move us to knowledge. That is the third eye. That is the third eye of the Buddha. Also, it's the eye of gnosis, the eye of knowing, moving us away from object to subject, moving us away from duality to non-duality, moving us away from fragmentation into non-fragmentation or unity, moving us away from religion and theology and gods and goddesses to a beautiful, serene inner experience, moving us away from myth and metaphor back into what really myth and metaphor are, that we decode the various myths and metaphors. The third eye is which informs us of archetypes, because don't forget that much of traditional Indian art, perhaps all art, all classical art of all civilizations, I don't know, but especially Indian, is archetypal. So it is that inner third eye, and I use the eye fully aware that there is no such thing as the eye. Call it inner awareness, call it inner space, call it inner realization, call it state of mind where I've shut my two outer eyes. Let's think of the two birds of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, there's a very beautiful mantra which says that there are two birds of the self-same tree sitting on the branch of a tree. And one bird eats sweet fruit but is tired and deluded. The second bird is serene and quiet and just watches. The second bird is that third eye. The first bird are our two eyes, totally involved with the world, totally involved with the forms and the names. Because when you are involved with nama rupa, forms and names, you are in the world of the sakar, which has a form. And anything that has a form is unstable. That form can change. That form can mean different things at different times. Excuse me. That form will die. Particularly if you're talking about music and dance, that form is going to change suddenly. So that is not the eventual resting point of beauty. Yes, it's very beautiful to be involved with Nama Rupa, name and form, which includes color, which includes texture, which includes movement, which includes the various forms, the various lines, the square, the circle, the triangles, the geometry. Also, what I call the eternal feminine, that is Prakriti, the world of matter, the world of kamana, the world of emotion, the world of desire. All that is out there for us to enjoy, for us to understand, for us to be fully involved with it. But it is not the end point of our involvement with all of this. We have the unique capacity as human beings and as contemplative human beings, not the run-of-the-mill human being. If I might use a Sanskrit word, samajika and rasika. Samajika means a person of the samaj. Samaj means the everyday ordinary person. And I use the word ordinary with great respect. I'm not putting them down. All I'm saying is that their interest, their involvement, their capacity is only to be involved with the world of art at an outer level, the superficial level. They are not able to, they have not been taught to take it to an inner, what is called paroksha, another two very beautiful words which we use in Saundarya Mimamsa. In other words, Saundarya Mimamsa is the word for aesthetics. Sakshat and Paroksha. Sakshat means the world as you see it, your
Yeah.
initial engagement with the world, either the natural world or the world of art, and which incidentally in the Indian system are totally connected. That we are totally connected with the world of nature. The trees, the leaves, the fruits, the flowers, the river, the peacock, the parrot, the sky, the sap. We cannot be totally away from it. Most Indian concepts of beauty resonate with the world of nature. So that is sakshat, what you engage with. Paroksha is the inner, hidden, secretive, deeper, silent, formless feel. All of the outer world is knowledge, Dvaita. The inner world is knowing. There is no knowledge, there is knowing. And there is again a very beautiful verse in the Vedas where it says speech is of four types or four levels, it says. We human beings are involved only with a quarter. 3/4 of speech lies hidden in a cave. That word cave is very, very important. It is a cave in our mind, a space in our mind where speech resides, speech rests in its beautiful, ultimate, serene, quiet state, which is unspeakable. There are no words at that point. It's just a overwhelming feeling of ananda that arises from our engagement with the objective world. Let me give you one of many, many examples from my personal life. I was sitting with a very well-known musician who was practicing. I don't happen to be a musician or a musicologist, but I do enjoy listening to music. So I sat at his feet, listening to his riyaz. And at one particular point, he completely stopped and went into a trance. He was playing the sitar. And he went into a trance. And I dare not ask him what's going on at that point. But at the end of the riyaz, I took the courage of asking him, "Sir, what happened at that particular point that you went into a trance?" So he says, when I pulled the gandhar, which means the sa re ga, the string of gandhar, when I pulled the gandhar, I've never heard such a beautiful gandhar in my life. It completely mesmerized me, that particular sound. So pure it was, so beautiful it was, that it sent me in a state of trance. And again, to continue for one more minute in the world of music, Ustad Vilayat Khan, considered one of the sitarists of the millennium, if not the century, he told me once, and it's in Hindi and I'll translate it. He says, "मैंने कितने पापड़ बेले होंगे?" How many papads I must have rolled out. The word dealing out papad refers to the middle class activity of women to make a certain living. मैंने कितने पापड़ बेले होंगे कि मैं यहाँ तक पहुंचा. How much have I labored to reach this point, which was, of course, a peak of excellence. But he was not satisfied. He says, मेरे को कितने और भी पापड़ बेलने पड़ेंगे. How much more will I have to labor and work? जब एक मेरा सूर, one sur of mine, Allah तक पहुंचे, reaches the Almighty. See, that is the third eye. Beauty, and I use the word with great caution here, is like a very flirtatious woman. It takes away your attention completely. and you're completely captured in that very sensuous, flirtatious moment of the beautiful, uh, without realizing that you're trapped there. Because the ultimate end point of that very beautiful situation, sound, color, music, form, whatever, texture, embroidery, all the 64 arts, the end point is that inner, quiet, contemplative realization. Tagore once said that when I sing a song, I expect you to go home and complete it. What did he mean by that? By that he meant that listen to my song as I'm singing it, understand it fully, but go home in a quiet place and recreate that song in your own mind. Recreate all the little rhythms, the textures, the metaphors, the lyrics, and then it'll be a totally different experience. Your whole consciousness will expand, and you will move away from the world of duality to the world of non-duality, which is a very, very beautiful space to be. Now, the difficulty with the third eye, as is that whole space that I should call it the third space maybe, is that it is very difficult to abide there for ordinary human beings. We can be there only for a brief moment. We live in this world of name and form. So we're constantly in this outer world. But that inner, subjective, serene, contemplative experience is what is called kshanika, which means transient. And the best we can do as ordinary human beings is to ruminate. That is, as the day goes on, just as the cow ruminates, brings her food out, eats the food and puts it in, but after a while brings it out and chews again, and then puts it back in, and keeps on doing this all through the day. We can do the same thing, that we can recreate that experience briefly. The other thing about this third eye is that you can't program it. It comes through training, it comes through observation, it comes through following elders, it comes through years and years of contemplation, of thinking about that beautiful object, whether it is sculpture, painting, whatever. And that inner realization through the third eye comes suddenly and unexpectedly. It's called a theophany or an epiphany. Suddenly, as if you're walking on a very dark road and there are dark, foreboding clouds, and suddenly there is lightning, and the whole world becomes clear to you in that one very minute. It is that suddenness of that experience that is a feature of the third eye. Just unexpectedly, you start feeling something very different about the whole artistic experience, if you want to call it. So these are some features, and if I might just read a couple of little paragraphs.
I would love that.
It is the third eye, this is page number 8. It is the third eye that will take us from art history to aesthetics, from the outer to the inner, from objectivity to subjectivity, from buddhi pradhan or material to adhyatmik pradhan or spiritual, and ensure that aesthetics remains tied to religion and spirituality at the same time. It will uncover poetic truth in our arts and move us away from socio-historic facts, whether that truth is apprehended by rasa or dhvani, chanda or laya, artha and apeksha. It works by expansion of our consciousness, a shift from a limited to a larger perspective, a realization that the world around us is a mirror of our mind, and the mind in turn resonates with that world. The aesthetic truth that the third eye experiences stays away from theology. It includes the temple, but prefers to be in its shadows rather than enter it. For once you enter the temple, you are confronted with the image or images of gods, and the possibility of divine or religious truth opens up. So here is a very, very interesting point, that even though most of our traditional quote unquote art objects are religious, are temple based, but aesthetics is not theology. That Krishna in Vrindavan, in the Dashama Skanda, is not a god. He is a cowherd. And I am to enjoy Krishna as a cowherd through metaphor, through myth, through archetypes, and so on. And the Bhagavad Puran very clearly states, Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Puran, do not venerate me with rites and rituals, but play with me with song and dance. See, there again he's making that very strong hint. Don't bring theology into beauty. Nothing wrong with theology. If you are a very religious person, you should obviously stay within the realm of theology. But if you want to be an aesthetician, if you want to enjoy beauty, for us, beauty can be self-standing, completely devoid of its connection with religion. Because we are not interested in the religious truth of that object, because then we'd be doing something quite different. We would be praying, we would be offering flowers, we would be doing all the sanskaras appropriate to that particular temple or murti or occasion. But we want to celebrate that object of beauty, totally outside religion. And again, that is the feature of the third eye. It is the inner eye, the inner space, the inner realization that lets you do that. And this, I think, is a fundamental difference, if I might say, between the Western aesthetic tradition and the Indian/Hindu tradition. That it is only the Indian/Hindu tradition that lets you enjoy a religious object of beauty outside religion. And the word that we use in Sanskrit, a word that was coined by a 9th century Kashmiri philosopher called Abhinavgupta in his system of philosophy called Kashmir Shaivism, that art experience, which he calls Rasa Ananda, Ananda of Rasa, Ananda of Rasa, is Brahmananda Sahodara. It is the twin brother of Brahmananda, means knowledge of Brahman. I don't think Western aesthetics is going to be able to say that. That we were so bold and courageous to say that I'm going to take an image of Krishna and enjoy it aesthetically and not venerate it as people do in their home shrines or temples. So that is because of my third eye that I can do that. So maybe a couple of more pages and then we can stop. So let me read another page 10, which I had marked out. When it comes to beauty and beautiful, we in India have a distinct worldview, a unique drishti which informs our lives, directs our attention, touches our very being. That drishti is not just the optical act of seeing, but it is a synesthetic, synoptic activity where seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, and even feeling all come together in an integral whole to create an experience of delight. This is what happens in the third eye, that we are able to take that object of beauty, art object, and enjoy it at multiple levels. Take a Krishna painting and we sing with it, we dance with it. We cook some food and offer it in a temple maybe. but we are interested only in the smells and the aromas and so on. So synesthetic, bringing together all kinds of sensations, uh, and then making it into one. That is the third eye. So if I might just go to a couple of more pages. When I talk about the third eye of Indian art, I'm also bringing with it a certain identity of our country, of our civilization. Call it India, call it Bharat, call it Sanatana, whatever you want. Every word has its own troublesome baggage. So there is something about Indian art that we are able to bring it together, saying, this is Indian. Whether you are in India or you're outside India. That becomes what I call the pehchan of Indian art. Somehow you know this is Indian. The color. Again, to give you a very trivial example, a wife of a art historian friend of mine, and we were having lunch here in Mumbai, and she was a little late, and she comes in hurriedly and apologizes, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late," and all that. And then she says, "Hey, look at my jacket. Look at my Indian jacket," she says. So I looked at it and I said, "Joan, if you don't mind, the jacket is lovely. It is made in India, but it is not Indian." "Oh," she says, "why?" I said, "Look, the color that it has is not an Indian color. The motifs on that jacket are not Indian. Yes, it was made in India. Yes, it is beautiful, but no, it is not Indian." You see?
What was the color?
It was a pastel green color, not an Indian color at all. So now, having said that, in modern India, all colors are Indian colors. I'm talking about traditional Indian colors. So again, yes, it is a jacket bought in India, but to my mind, it's not an Indian jacket. So these are the features of the third eye, bit by bit, that come through.
We could also ask you one more question, that the book is really steeped in references from the Vedas and the Upanishads. So do you have a favorite passage, that resonates with the Upanishads?
Two that I just told you.
Yeah.
The passage from the Vedas that I love very much is that there are 4 types of speech, and we human beings speak only 1/4. The 3/4 of speech is hidden and unspoken. In other words, translating it into beauty, we're able to speak about beauty only 25%. 75% of that beauty is unspoken, unspeakable, and is hidden, which you then gradually discover slowly, bit by bit, layer upon layer, moment after moment. That is in the Vedas. And the one that I like in the Upanishad is also the 2 birds on the self-same tree. 2 very, very beautiful expressions. So I'm going to read from page 56. So here's an interesting question, that why do we need to consider the third eye? Why we're not satisfied with our 2 eyes? With our 2 eyes, that we are able to do a lot, to see the texture, the color, the form, and everything. Why is it that we need the third eye? As I said a little while earlier, we need the third eye, and there's another Upanishadic verse which is very dear to me. Asato ma sat gamaya, tamaso ma jyotir gamaya, mruto ma mrutam gamaya. That the 2 eyes can only give you the asat, which is half-truth. And there is within us that desire to go from half-truth to full truth. Asatoma sat gamaya. Asat is half-truth, apparent truth. Sat is purna satya. Take me to purna satya. There is that inbuilt desire. Tamasoma jyotir gamaya. Take me from darkness or ignorance to jyotir, which means light. It is in the third eye, third space, that 1,000 suns are shining. Why are you asking me to be satisfied with just one sun of this life that I'm leading? And Mruto ma amrutam gamaya. All these beautiful objects that I'm seeing now, the beautiful flower that is blooming on the branch of a tree, will perish in time. Everything dies, but yet there is something imperishable. Let everything die. Let that flower bloom in its time and go away. Let us human beings in our time create beautiful objects and pass on. Let the musician, Walad Khan, who was playing such a beautiful Rag Bahar, he's going to stop playing and go away. That dies, that music, quote unquote, dies. If somebody is showing me a beautiful painting, and I'm going to look at it and almost embrace it, but even that will go away. Painting might go back and somewhere else. So anything that lives must die. And art lives, beauty lives, but it also dies. But even though it dies, there is something ageless and undying about beauty, about art, about Madhurya, about Krishna, about song, and so on. Because once it is within me, in my third space, in my third eye, it'll be there forever as long as I am there. So it is the idea that we need the third eye, or the third eye almost propels us towards itself, is because of these reasons.
I'll have to ask you, what are your favorite books on Indian culture, philosophy, or art? Books that have inspired you.
Starting with the Upanishads, they always inspire me. Then I'm going to move on to Bharata's Natya foundational book of Indian aesthetics. From then I'm going to move on to Anandavardhana's Lochana, where he expounds on the whole concept of metaphor and how a metaphor expands. Then I'm going to go on to Abhinavagupta, 9th century Kashmir Shaivism, which he expounds on the whole Ardhanari, which I call the motif of the third art.
Please tell us a little bit about the Ardhanari.
Well, the Ardhanari is exactly the two eyes and the third eye. Parvati is material, Parvati is feminine, Parvati is sensual, beautiful in its own right. Shiva is spiritual, but they come together through the so-called marriage, through love, and they stay together as the Ardhanari. So the point Abhinav Gupta is trying to make is that in moving away from the two eyes, you don't have to abandon it. See, because don't forget, at the back of our mind and all our minds is Shankara, who's hovering around our mind. Because Shankara, the Adi Shankara, close to where you live in Karnataka, declares that this whole world is mithya and false and illusion, and give up this world if you want to attain moksha and ananda. If you remain in this world, you're doomed. You know, those completely prophetic, nihilistic ideas of Shankara, only he spoke of it. All of us after him have completely abandoned it. So Abhinavagupta does not abandon Parvati, does not abandon sensuality, does not say that sensuality has to be totally given up because it is false. Nothing is false. For the third eye, everything is true. Only it is half true. We have to make it the full truth. And then on my contemporary aestheticians, I will have to include the late Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan, who was a beautiful, grand teacher. And I will also include Dr. Karan Singh, still alive, who has an extraordinary sense of aesthetics. And so these are the two people that I admire.
And what advice would you give to aspiring writers, who want to write about cultural and aesthetic themes of India?
What advice? Well, I'm too small a person to give advice. But as I feel myself, until something beautiful makes you cry, I don't think you're going to be able to write about it. Something beautiful has to bring tears to your eyes. Could be just a small petal, it could be a dewdrop on a leaf, it could be the beautiful Ganashyam color in a certain painting, it could be a curvaceous line somewhere else, it could be just one word in a song. It becomes so beautiful that the only response that I have at that point is I cry about it. I cry with joy. And I cry with what is called Vismaya. Vismaya means wonder. However could such a beautiful thing happen or be created? And one last thing, if I may, that the third eye, and I'm not saying that all of us, or including myself, are capable of entering the third eye. I can talk about it, but I'm not sure that I can even enter it. That the third eye converts vismarana into smarana, what you have forgotten into what you will then remember. It brings about remembrance. It brings about remembrance of who you really are. It brings about remembrance of your Atman, which you've forgotten in your day-to-day life. We are so busy running around with our day-to-day lives that we have forgotten that there is such a thing as Atman. It is that experience of the third eye. It is that experience of the beautiful that brings about that sudden remembrance as to who I am. And at that point, you have a sense of absolute unbelievable wonder, followed by tears. Why tears? Because you realize that you cannot be in that world forever. We are embodied, ordinary human beings. We have to return to this samsara. And this samsara has taken us away from that very beautiful moment in the third eye. That's why the tears.
Thank you so much, Harsha, for being on today's podcast. It was an absolute honor to have you. And for all our listeners, the book, once again, is called The Third Eye of Indian Art, a book I'm sure everybody will enjoy. And thank you for taking out the time today.
Thank you for asking me.